AI'd the dog successfully. We've got a pregnant dog. We went through the whelp. Mum's doing okay. Now it's time to look after the puppies, make sure the puppies do okay. And what can go wrong, and what can you do to be aware of it, and what can you do to fix it? So, number one is a safe environment for your puppies. This is not something you do the day of whelp. This is something you plan ahead of time. We like our whelping kit. It works really well. But you've got to have an area where the puppies are safe, they can't get stepped on, they can be kept warm. Number two, you need to weigh your puppies daily. We're looking for a half an ounce gain or more every day. The first 24 hours, they'll lose half an ounce, and after that, they'll start putting it back on. Half an ounce gain every day for a quiet puppy that feels nice and warm, that's wriggly when you touch it, that's gaining weight, is a happy puppy, and there's probably nothing wrong. That's great. But if it's not losing weight, if it's not gaining weight, if it's crying, if it's cold, you've got to step in. So, what can you do? Well, first is, if they're getting cold, they're getting rejected by mum, an incubator. We sell incubators. I recommend that everybody has an incubator, because there will be times when absolutely you should have had an incubator, and without it, the puppy doesn't make it. So, incubator, keep warm. Have a feeding tube. You can definitely go to Walmart and go buy a baby bottle for humans and some goat's milk. That you can get pretty much any time of the day. Feeding tube, I challenge you to find a feeding tube, especially on the weekend. You're not going to get it. You probably go to most of your vets, they won't even have a feeding tube. It's a dirt cheap piece of equipment. It does come with a puppy care kit. It's a fundamental piece of equipment that you should absolutely have, because you can get into a situation where a puppy goes downhill and it won't feed. And if it won't feed, it will not live. And the only way that you can get that puppy to live is to basically force feed it with a feeding tube. It sounds terrible. It's really easy to do. I've got videos on this. An oxygen machine, O2 machine. So the next thing that can happen is a puppy really gets in trouble and it starts to do this short breathing. Puppy's having a hard time getting oxygenated, maybe going a bit blue. Incubator and oxygen machine, the only way you're going to save that puppy. An oxygen machine generates oxygen out of the air. It does it continuously. We sell those products on our website. I think the one we have at the moment is $425. It's a great investment. Without it, if you do enough of this, you will need an oxygen machine at some point. And if you don't have an oxygen machine, you'll lose a puppy. So an oxygen machine in an incubator is the way that you can get a puppy to survive. It doesn't mean it's going to make it, but it's not going to make it without those things. So an oxygen machine is something that I would think you should seriously think about investing in. Okay, so we can have, by the way, when the puppies are born, look in their mouths and make sure they don't have a cleft palate. A hair lip is one thing that you probably get away with. A cleft palate is equivalent to a hair lip, but rather than being a hair lip right here, it's all the way in the top of the mouth, and there's an opening like this in the top of the mouth. And what happens is there's an opening between the mouth and the sinus cavity. So when a puppy tries to suck, it can't develop vacuum because that suck just draws air through its nose, through that hole in the cleft palate, and it can't suckle. Puppies that have cleft palates typically don't make it. Puppies with cleft palates will have to be in an incubator and certainly will have to be tube fed until they're old enough that they can get past this and get onto solid food at maybe 3 weeks. Typically they don't make it, they fail to thrive, they get skinny and small, they don't put weight on, they finally get a sinus infection and they die. Most vets will advise you to not spend much time trying to do anything for a puppy that has a cleft palate, and I agree. I've had a few of these over the years, and my success rate has been a big fat 0. Now, I've done videos on this, and people have had comments that say, we take rescue puppies like this all the time, we make them live. Great, if you can do it, do it. But for me, I can tell you that it's been not very successful. So I don't spend my energy these days on cleft palate puppies, unless it's a very small cleft or it's a hair lip. That's a different story. So that's a cleft, so you've got to watch out for cleft palate. So now we're talking about, really this should have been up here, we're talking about deformities. So there are other things that can happen where puppies are born with things on the outside. I mean, if you're there at the vet may be able to do something to put things back inside. Herniated umbilicals, this is something that you need to watch out for when you're whelping. Don't leave a long entrail of umbilical cord hanging out here because you're asking mum to start chewing on it and cause a rupture right here. And that rupture could end up being something more serious with the guts coming out. So what we do is we cut that very short. We tie it off with some dental floss and we cut it back to about 1 millimeter or 2, so there's nothing to get teeth onto. And we do that right at birth, before mum ever has the puppies. And if you have a natural birth, we did the same thing. We take the puppy, we tie it off, we cut off the placenta, we give the puppies back to mum after they're nice and dried and warm up and breathing. And by the way, that's something that I should have talked about in the whelp process, is, and I'm going to bring this in now, so you've got to go put that into video number 4. When these puppies come out, especially from anesthesia, they tend to be not breathing, and they may not breathe for a minute or 2. What do? You hold them upside down, you support their head, you bounce them to get any fluids out of them. You can shake them like this. I've got videos on this. You've got to get them dried and warm. You've got to get them breathing before you do anything else. If they're not breathing, you've got to keep on doing it. You can blow in the mouth gently. You can give little pushes on their chest. You've got to get them breathing. All right, so deformities on the outside. Well, avoid the umbilical hernias by cutting it off short. If they do have a hernia, then that's going to have to be put back. If it's a big hernia with guts coming out, those guts are going to have to be put back inside and sewed up. I've done this myself. I've done this on a kitchen table with nothing more than some cotton and a needle that I put into some boiling water in the microwave, had somebody hold the puppy down, pull the margins together and stitch the puppy up, and the puppy was fine. You got to do what you got to do. You know, if this is at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got a herniated puppy with guts all over the place, you're not going to be able to take that to the vet. There's no time to get that done. You're going to have to try and do something. And if you don't get it done, at least you tried, right? And remember in all this, dogs and other mammals have lots of puppies because typically in the wild, they don't all survive. This is just part of the game. You can't fix everything, but you can be prepared to try to fix everything. Deformities. Okay, so now other deformities. Well, a very common one is what we call, well, let's talk about water babies. A puppy that comes out and is bloated up, its head's all swollen up, its whole body's swollen up, it's full of water. What can you do? I've never had one of these personally, but what you can do is you can give Lasix. You can give Lasix to the dog, and what Lasix does, it takes urine, it takes fluid off the blood through the kidneys, and the dog pees it out. Whether that will be successful, I don't know what else you can do, but I would be trying to give Lasix in a situation like that. And that's not something you're going to get over the counter. You're going to have to get a vet involved. If you've got a puppy that's born as a water baby, I don't know how long you've got to get this done, but I would think you've probably still got a few hours, maybe a day, to get something going with this, to see whether you'll be successful. And people who've had water babies might chime in on this and tell us what your experience is and what you did to try and save this, make the situation right. Other deformities. A very common, but I see it quite a bit, is small litter or a big puppy with a mum that has lots of milk. The babies are walrusing around and they're not ever getting up on their feet, and their back legs are splayed out behind them and they're kind of swimming around. And what happens is they get a flat chest because they're getting big and fat, getting lots of milk, they're laying on their chest and their chest gets flat. What you do is you tape up their back legs, and it forces them to get their chest off the ground so they can move their feet and move around. Works wonders. Do it as soon as you start seeing it. I've got videos on this. Deformities where the legs are bent around and are facing backwards. Looks terrible. I've had these. Take some tape, start bringing their legs in with some tape, and you will fix this if you start doing it early. And when I say early, if you have a puppy with a deformity like that at birth, start right away. Don't hang around. I've got videos on this. Go look at the videos. I'm not going to go into great detail right here. Yeah, so a lot of you are taking your babies away from mum and putting mum with babies every 3 hours and let them nurse, then put them back into an incubator away from mum. I don't like that as a solution. If you've got the right environment, then the puppies aren't going to get squished, they're going to keep warm, and then mums and babies can be together, and mum can do what she's supposed to do, be a mother. You don't give her anxiety. You don't cause problems where puppies haven't been fed for 3 hours. Mum's milk is really built up. You feed the puppies and milk starts running out of their noses, and then they start getting inhalation and pneumonia. You can help to try and avoid those by putting babies and mums together, but you've got to have the right environment. So that brings us to the next thing, which is basically milk inhalation. And this is something that does happen a lot, milk inhalation. And this is where a puppy gets milk into its lungs, has a kind of a crackling noise. If you put a stethoscope up to its chest, you'll hear a kind of a crackling noise as it breathes in. It may develop into a runny nose. That's pneumonia that's set in. It's now got an infection in its lungs. That dog needs clavamox or at least antibiotics, which you're probably going to have to go to the vet to get. If you see puppies that are nursing, they've got milk running out of their nose, not a lot you can do about this. I mean, they're going to nurse. I mean, you could take them away and just tube feed them, but we don't do that. We just start paying attention to if there's any signs of pneumonia so we can get antibiotics on board and we let them get on with them. What else? I think we're probably getting to the end of this now. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about. I'm sure there is, and I haven't thought about it. I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate people who subscribe to me. It helps me, encourage me to do more of these videos. But do remember, disclaimer here, I am not a vet. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I'm purely a person who's been breeding dogs for the last couple of decades. Any information that you got from this video, use at your own risk. There's nothing implied here, and certainly this should not be used as a substitute for advice from your veterinarian or your medical professional. I hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for more of them. Bye.